Here's an interesting fact. The most important airport in all of Germany is not the Brandenburg Airport. It's not the Frankfurt International Airport. It doesn't have any flight attendants. It doesn't have any baggage checkers. It doesn't have any cute little coffee shops. It doesn't even have any planes in operation anymore. All that it has are arrivals, and a lot of them at that. In 2022, at Tegel Airport in Berlin, that number was about 75,000 arrivals, all from Ukraine, all being Ukrainian refugees. You see, in the past couple of years, Tegel has become the Berlin headquarters for addressing, processing, and finding places to stay for these Ukrainian refugees. And so far, it's been working. About 44% of Ukrainian refugees living in Berlin have said that they want to stay there for a longer period of time. But when Noah Babel and I went to Berlin to meet with NGO leaders, government officials, and citizen activists on the policies being implemented, we heard a lot more about the challenges that Ukrainian refugees were facing than the successes of the German system. We heard about the language requirements that Ukrainian refugees had to overcome. We heard about the tight labor market and how that was hurting Ukrainian refugees. And we heard about the difficult education system that Ukrainians have to face when coming over. Now, all of this is really important, but it's not the only obstacles that Ukrainians face. But they do have to do with one crucial variable to understanding this entire process, and that is the German bureaucracy. Now, when I talk about bureaucracy, I mean the unelected officials in institutions whose sole job is to make sure that policies get implemented, that policies come to fruition. Now, in Germany, that ends up being some of the people that we associate with being the most boring, bland, and stiff people in government. Now, whether you believe that's true or not is of no interest to me today. What I'm curious about is how those boring and stiff people are so crucial to understanding our everyday lives, so crucial to shaping how Ukrainian refugees conduct their everyday lives. The bureaucracy is how the government interacts with you, the citizen. The bureaucracy is how we come to understand what the government actually does. And I would argue to you today that the bureaucracy is crucial to expanding a nation's ability to provide welfare to its citizens. Let's look to the United States for one really quick example. Most historians believe that this country's first form of bureaucracy was the USPS, established under the Articles of Confederation. The persistence and existence of the USPS today is a great example as to how a bureaucracy is so necessary to expanding a nation's welfare system and ensuring a nation can run effectively. To put this into context for you, last year there were about 690 million visits to USPS. That's a lot of visits, and that's a large system. If we had a system like that controlled by Congress, a democratic body that's known for its unproductiveness, inefficiency, and tendency to over-politicize basically everything, we would have a scenario in which the USPS would undoubtedly fail. Instead, we need a different system, a system in which there is an unelected body with administrators whose sole focus it is to make sure that your mail gets to the place that it needs to be, to make sure that the system can run as well as possible. Because if it was put in the hands of anyone else, it would surely fail. When we look at Germany and the situation it faces today, with a rise in Ukrainian refugees entering the country, it's similarly an ever-present logistical nightmare that the bureaucracy is key to solving. The bureaucracy is key because it allows the German government to efficiently and effectively reach out to Ukrainian citizens. So let's bring this conversation back to Berlin and look at the steps that Berlin took to actually help Ukrainians and reach out to them. When the Russian invasion first began, the EU established numerous standards and directives on how Ukrainian refugees were to be treated and the protections that they would receive. Germany went way beyond those standards, and I'm here to applaud them for that today. They provided welfare, housing, labor, educational benefits to Ukrainians that, didn't really exist before. But with all of this taking place, it's crucial to acknowledge that Afghani refugees and Syrian refugees did not get these same benefits. They didn't really get these benefits at all. So as Noah and I grappled with these differences in how the refugees were treated, we came to understand some of the greatest flaws that are entrenched in these bureaucracies as well. There are two I want to talk about today. The first is the nature of the bureaucracies. The second is the size of the bureaucracy. Let's start with the nature. Bureaucracies in their nature are not democratic, as I've already mentioned. They don't really answer to any voters, and as a result, they can get away with some pretty odd decisions that can end up really hurting people in the end. The second issue with the bureaucracy is the size. It's costly to manage and it's costly to run. But even more than that, because the bureaucracy is so big, it's difficult to actually change systemic biases entrenched in these bureaucracies. Biases like refugees being treated differently, or even broader biases that are ubiquitous among bureaucracies, such as the fact that bureaucracies normally work better in higher income areas and worse in low income areas, or at least less accessible. These differences are almost impossible to really fix because bureaucracies are so large. They're so big and so difficult to manage. So, what do we actually do, and how does this hurt Ukrainians? When we look to Berlin today, Ukrainians are now inundated with paperwork. But keyly, it's paperwork that they don't understand and they don't know how to manage. So when Noah and I went to Berlin to understand what was going on, we put it as a priority to meet with NGOs whose sole job it was to assist Ukrainians in understanding what is this system that they're in? What are they actually dealing with here? What we saw truly opened our eyes to the effect that the bureaucracy was having throughout the country. When we went to Interaction and Culture Coaches, two NGOs whose sole job it is to assist refugees in understanding the paperwork in front of them, we saw lines of refugee families going completely outside of these offices, each one of them just hoping to talk to volunteers to make sense of the paperwork that they were dealing with. Now, it's not just paperwork. This is paperwork that's going to affect their lives. It's going to affect their entire stay within Berlin. It's paperwork that's going to help them get an education, get a job, get housing. And the fact of the matter is, these Ukrainians just don't understand the paperwork in front of them. It's too complicated. There's too much of that. So even though the bureaucracy is well-intentioned, it's not actually leading to the results that we all want it to. And that's, again, a key issue with bureaucracy. It's not democratic. It doesn't receive feedback as consistently as we want it to. And that hurts Ukrainians in ways we can't even begin to imagine. When they go from those NGOs into the real world and carry out their lives in Berlin, there's a chance they might not have the housing that they wished for, that the welfare system has not helped them in the ways that we wanted it to. So when we look to the future, when we think of how can we reform and amend bureaucracies, there's a crucial question that we have to ask. Do we allow bureaucracies to stand as an obstacle to true progress? Or do we implement smart, immediate reforms that will allow us to actually spread the welfare of a nation to its people? Now, I'm not a policymaker. I don't really know how to do this. But I know that that's going to start with policymakers that put the people first and seek to unite rather than divide us, that actually understand that if someone's coming into a country and needs help, we ought to give them the help that they need. And this issue within Berlin is one that has confused me and made my mind run in circles. It's difficult to understand. I get it. It's probably difficult for you all to understand. But the fact of the matter is, the German officials and the German bureaucracy is at least putting the people first in many regards. They are applying temporary protections for Ukrainians that allows them to find places to stay, places to work, and places to learn. And that is something that I can stand here today and applaud. If we want to see a world where people are going to have these protections and where people feel safe and understood by their government, that's what we're going to need. We're going to need bureaucracies that can stand up and actually help and listen to others. Thank you so much.